Welcome to the wonderful world of stretching. Even though I'm a martial artist, I've designed some of these stretching exercises and the agility exercises to be used by all athletes, regardless of the sport. Remember, think of the muscle groups that we're stretching. We'll be working with three basic muscle groups. The adductor longus, the sartorius, right in here, the inside of your leg. The hamstring group, the biceps femoris, in the back of the leg. And a little bit of stretching with the top head of the quadriceps, right up in here in the hip joint, okay? Remember, a muscle always pulls, it never pushes. Okay? So when we're working those exercises, when we're working the strengthening exercises, when we're working the flexibility exercises, very simply like this. The biceps femoris will work now because it's going to pull that knee up, okay, and down. Now, what happens when I pull it back down? The biceps femoris pull it up, the quadricep pulls it down. So you always have that push-pull. That's an agonistic muscle movement and an antagonistic muscle movement. The agonistic muscle movement does the work. The antagonistic muscle group fights against that movement. So it's always, again, a push-pull type relationship. Okay? The three most important aspects of flexibility. Number one, injury. A relaxed muscle, a flexible muscle, is much less prone to injury because it'll give with the technique. It'll give with a bruise, or it'll give with the jarring elbow or a knee or falling. It'll give. It'll respond. Number two, a relaxed muscle is a quicker muscle, an explosive type muscle. The contraction is quicker. A relaxed muscle is relaxed. Then all of a sudden you have an explosion and it contracts. Number three, a relaxed muscle is much easier to move around, much more graceful, much more fluid in the movement, circling around when you're moving around sideways to the front back. Foot movement is much easier because the muscles are relaxed. They're much more easily moved by your thoughts. Okay, now let's talk about the muscles that we're going to be working with. There's three basic muscle groups. The first one, let's say, is the top head of the quadricep. It's right up in here. It attaches just above the hip joint, the iliopsoas, and again attaches down here to the inside of the medial area of the fibula and the tibia. Okay, but we'll basically be working with just the top header, right over in here, the flexibility within the hip joint. The second group we'll be working is the adductor group, the adductor longus and the sartorius, right down in here. The sartorius is down here. The adductor longus, again, attaches to the inside of the hip joint, up to the top, inside your crotch. Again, attaches down here, just below the knee at the fibula and the tibia. Now, in layman's terms, we're calling it attachments, but in basic kinesiological movement and physiology of exercise, we have the origin and the insertion. The origin is to the main point, to the center of the body. So let's say the quadricep here, this is the center point of the body. So the origin is up here because it's closer to the center point. The insertion, again, is down here. On the adductor group, the origin is up here to the hip joint. The insertion is down here. The third muscle group we'll be working with is the hamstring group, or the biceps femoris. The biceps femoris start down here. Now again, they attach just above the hip joint. You can't see it now for the gluteus maximus right here, this big butt muscle, you might say. But it attaches under there, and the origin is right up in here, right at the upper head of the hip joint. And again attaches just below the knee at the fibula and tibia again. So we'll be working with three muscle groups. Again, the upper head of the quadricep, the adductor longus, the sartorius, the biceps femoris, or the hamstring group. Now, what exactly happens when we do work flexibility, okay? Each muscle is made up of thousands and thousands of muscle fibers. Let's say my fingers are those muscle fibers, okay? Now, what happens now, when I stretch, when I work flexibility, a certain amount of those muscle fibers will stretch. And again, a certain amount of those muscle fibers will tear. What we need to do, those muscle fibers that are stretched, is keeping them elongated. Keep them long, so they'll stretch out. Those muscle fibers that are torn, we have to give them a certain amount of rest so they, number one, grow back together. When you stretch the elongated muscle fibers and you let the torn muscle fibers heal, you have a longer muscle. Therefore, you have flexibility. Also, a relaxed muscle. Remember, we'll be working with the top head of the quadricep right up in here, the adductor longus and the sartorius right down in here, and the biceps femoris and the hamstring group right back in here. Okay, you ready? No questions yet? Okay, get your warm-ups. We're ready to go. One more thing I want you to remember before we start with the warm-ups. Your muscles are very similar to a rubber band. If you stretch them too far, they'll tear and they'll rip. So take your time. Work with these muscles. Get them warmed up. Work the tension in the muscle. And hold it for a certain length of time. This is what I call the 3 T's. Time, temperature, and tension. Okay, now before we work our formal stretching exercises, we need to warm the body up. We'll work from the neck down. Now remember, you can do these stretching exercises every day. You can do them at any age, just about anywhere you want to do them. Okay, first of all, let's work the neck. Hands on your hips, feet about shoulder width apart. Circling the neck. Big circles at first, big circles. What we're working now is stretching out of the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius. Now reverse it. The sternocleidomastoid muscle is right here, from the neck down to your collarbone. The trapezius is this muscle right here. Circle the neck and reverse it. Okay, now face straight forward. Now turn your head all the way to the left, as far as you can. Really push it. Good. Now take it to the right, as far as you can push it. Turn that head. Good. Now big circles forward and back. Now circle again. Big circle. A little quicker now. A little quicker. Reverse it. And reverse it again. Okay, good. Now we'll work the shoulders. That's again, feet still about shoulder width apart, hands out to the side, just turn. Pivot on the balls of your feet. Turn from your trunk up.